Scott Golden, Golden Opportunities Coaching, and the @PO Perception Twitter account here. Today we're going to discuss what is self-love. In the popular psychology, in the traditional psychology, loving oneself is something that is discussed so often that I think it gets lost for most people. And the majority of struggles, the majority of addictions, the majority of personal struggles, relational struggles, and all other emotional upsets come down to feelings of worthiness and feelings of lack of self-love. But to understand what self-love is, one also must understand what self-love is not. And that's a struggle for a lot of people. We live in a contradictory society. Society teaches us to be humanitarians and to give to others. It also teaches us to look out for ourselves because, to some degree, everyone is out to get each other and everyone else is out to survive, to get over, to exist in a world where there isn't enough. The lack mentality makes it really hard for many people to completely and totally love themselves in fullness. Now, self-love, first of all, from a universal perspective, from a complete perspective, love is unconditional acceptance, and thus it is extremely difficult. And learning to self-love and learning to love oneself completely is something that many people have difficulty doing, in great part because there are so many things that people do that are counterproductive. When you overgive, you're out of balance with self-love. When you engage in a addictive behavior, you're out of balance with self-love. Self-criticism, either in verbal or nonverbal tones, is being out of balance with self-love. So the beginning of that is self-love is unconditional acceptance of all that you are. It is the acceptance of what you're capable of, but also being willing to forgive yourself when you have fallen short, or when you were underinformed, undermotivated, or in some way counterproductive to the goals that you have or the aspirations you're trying to achieve. Most often what happens, though, is people tell themselves a story that the chance they didn't take or the thing that they did is the definition of who they are. This misnomer and thereby self-deprecating behavior is ultimately the absence of self-love. Now, how does one learn to love themselves? Understanding that emotions are just choices of focus is the beginning of loving yourself. And then course correcting, and reminding yourself that any decision you've made in the past that is counterproductive or counteractive is irrelevant now because you don't live in the past anymore. The understanding of the value of the now, the understanding of the value of all that you are capable of doing, the understanding of the very idea that to love yourself is to forgive yourself for not being as knowledgeable as you could be, or doing things that are out of alignment with the person you desire to be or have desired to be in the past, is essential to retraining your mind. We don't live in a society that teaches proper balance of humility and self-awareness. Now, a humble person says, no one is better than me, and I am better than no one. They understand that we are one. The unity of oneness is exceptionally important when learning to love yourself, because if another person is, quote, better, in the illusion of competition than you, then you are, quote, better than others. But instead of thinking of it as better, we can each think of it as individual contributors to the collective greater good that is our world. And when we begin to do that, and when we begin to see that we can make a difference, that is where self-love actually comes from. Giving to others on the basis, now here's an interesting thing, self-love is not over-giving to others, but it's also not being selfish. And so self-love is the balance between martyrdom and awareness of not hoarding or being out of balance with overgiving or undergiving. In other words, being concerned with how you can make a difference in the world while still taking care of yourself. Self-love means taking time for reflection, time for planning, time for celebration of what you have done. It means controlling what you put into your mind, controlling what you put into the social circle that you operate within. The control is important because when you control what's around you, you will be controlling how you see the world, how you see yourself, the value of all of that. And then you will begin to understand how that translates to really becoming into a better place in being and a deeper place of understanding. When you don't understand how to behave in a manner that upholds you, you will get drained. Now, the draining can happen in a number of ways. You will overextend yourself. You will make promises that you cannot keep or promises that you don't desire to keep. Most often we promise because we're trying to avoid conflict. Most often we promise because we're trying to be what the world considers a good person. But part of being good or progressive for yourself is seeing your value as equal to the others in your life, equal to those you care about, equal to your family, your friends, your children, or anything else. Self-love is also the acceptance that you will misstep, you will get out of alignment from time to time. It's going to happen. Because if you were capable of knowing everything so that you could live a perfect life, first of all, the misnomer that there is perfection in life would need to be examined. But secondly, if you are capable of living that sort of existence, you would no longer need to be human. Part of being human is the understanding of growth, learning, contributing, variety of experiences, a series of experiences. So to love yourself is to understand that sometimes the experiences that you need to have or desire to have are truly happening to or around you because you need to focus on different things. Most often, the big challenge for many people is loving themselves when they've engaged in a behavior, a relationship, a job, or other part of life that isn't in alignment with where they want to be, with where they ultimately desire to be going and or growing, and then they wonder, how much of my life have I wasted? Why did I waste so much time? Why did I put so much time into another person when they wouldn't do the same for me? Why did I stay married to someone who didn't love me as I was? Why did I give so much to my children when they ultimately, decided to turn on me or got involved in bad things? Now, that's not to say that we are to not love those in our lives, but here's the problem. Self-love is the understanding that if you don't have unconditional acceptance of self, you cannot give it to others. Because eventually what's going to happen in your brain is you're going to recognize the points at which you're not being accepted by other people, and then you're going to feel rejected, you're going to feel alienated, you're going to feel out of balance, you're going to feel struggling, you're going to feel anger, you're going to feel sadness. Now that isolation that comes when we haven't found our tribe, or when a person in our tribe passes away, or when we've moved to a new place and we don't have somebody, if you truly love yourself, then you can also project that love forward to meet new people, make new connections, and thus enrich your life with social interaction. The realities of where most people struggle is this. The average person, I read one study that said 78% of people consider themselves to be lonely, but you cannot be lonely if you're comfortable with your own company. The reason people are lonely is because the judgment they place upon themselves is often something that they try to find someone else to help them deal with rather than seeing their own value. And most individuals don't mean to do this, it's just that we've been conditioned to believe that popularity matters more in many cases than self-awareness and self-love. How do you learn to love yourself? Well, it's also being able to look at the most traumatic or difficult experiences in your life and say, what did I learn? How would I have handled this differently if I had more information? And did I do the best I could with what I had available to me at the given time. If I didn't do the best I could, why didn't I, and how can I show up for myself later? It's the ease of understanding that the concept of right and wrong is an illusion that we've been taught. It's the ease of understanding that there is no moral code outside of that which we've been taught. That is to say, not to say that we should do things that we consider immoral, but there's a whole different way of living. If one lives in the ease of the three-tiered code of is it positive, is it progressive, and does it do harm to anyone, including myself, that simple code will help a person to avoid engaging in behaviors which many people would consider immoral or uncomfortable. Now, that's not to say don't follow laws. Certainly, if there's laws or rules or restrictions in your life that you need to follow in order to be a good citizen, do that. Not saying go out and break laws. What I'm saying, though, is the rules you set for loving yourself are internal rules, and they should not be compared with other people, because the comparison will make you wonder whether or not you're doing it right. And therefore, when you get to a place where you're self-evaluating whether you're loving yourself right or whether you're living right, all of a sudden, you begin to doubt your own ability to be worthy of love. When you are truly in a loving relationship with yourself, you accept that all things are possible. All things are bouncing around and around and around to either positive or progressive mindset or destructive or negative mindset. And so if you're staying more in a negative mindset than you'd like to, one of the things you have to understand is you have to give the generosity and love and consideration that you would give to your best friend, your son or daughter, your spouse, your mentor, to yourself. And so often we're harder on ourselves because we expect our version of perfection from within our own rules. Most often when I work with clients, one of the biggest things I help them do is to identify the rules that they follow that make it difficult for them to give themselves love, acceptance, and allow growth as a person. Usually these are steeped within the training from previous relationships, family dynamics, and all other things that ultimately shape how a person views the world. When those issues are removed and a person is allowed to reevaluate the effectiveness, efficiency, and usefulness of the way that they've been living, most often self-love is significantly easier. Because what happens is the rules that a person is living by in order to be their version of successful often, and I would say this is about 60 to 70% of challenges for people, the rules they're living by do not meet a way in which they can love themselves because the standards they have for themselves are too high in some areas and not high enough in others. If one is too high with focus on accomplishment, but not high enough in terms of daily progressive growth, there will be an imbalance that ultimately leads to a person being disappointed, angry, self-hating, depressed, anxious, and all other negative emotions from a lower level. And so what true self-love really is seeking the balance between surety, knowledge, and gratitude for who you are, but the humility to realize you are part of the world, but not a solution for it. When a person believes that they have all the answers, when a person believes they are the solution, that's where narcissism and sociopathy and all these other lesser or greater things and personality flaws come from. But usually even that is an inversion of self-love, because when a person truly loves themselves, they begin to see themselves in others around them, and the value of every person starts to become a little more equal. When that value becomes more equal, then there is no need to compete. Therefore, the love that is given to self is just a reflection of the love that can be given to others. There's a lot of challenges as it relates to finding that balance, and so coaching can be exceptionally useful for individuals who are trying to find the balance between that nature to over analyze or be overcritical, and the balance of just stopping caring because one can't get it right. The beginning of self love is understanding you are right just where you are, and as long as you are focused on progress, you will continue to be right. Also, the acceptance that you can course correct anything that you've done in the past through changing your focus, and the meaning that it has been given is essential to balancing self love. It's not always easy, and it may go in contrast to the relationships you've had or the viewpoints you've had for years at a time. However, self love is the only way to make continual, consistent progress. This has been Scott Golden with Golden Opportunities Coaching. I remind you, keep your feet on the ground, your mind in the moment. Also, continue, like, subscribe. What are some areas in the comments below that you would like to work on self love regarding? And remember, we do have our subscriber drive going. Once we hit 100, we're going to give away a $400 package value. Keep abreast of these videos here. Hit the bell icon, like, subscribe, and we thank you for your support. Keep your feet on the ground, your mind in the moment. Until next time, everybody.